Welcome back to another gear review, folks. Today, I'm going to be going over all the things I carry with me on an average day of real estate photography. This video is specifically going over the gear in my photography bag and not the stuff I carry around for videos. That will be in a separate video. With that being said, let's jump in. First off, check out the new swag. Either way, I'll start this video off with a breakdown of my process for gear reviews. There are a few major criterion that I'll be talking about for each piece of gear. Number one, usability. This criteria is specifically going to be talking about how often I use this piece of equipment. Is it a daily use item that I can't live without? Or maybe it's something that I rarely use at all. Also, factored in this criteria is how easy the piece of gear is to use. Is it super complicated to set up and get running? Does it power on in 1 second? And is it instantly usable? Number two, price. I would think this topic matter goes without any explanation, but just in case, pricing is going to be about the cost of the gear and how that gear compares to other products in its category. And this directly leads us into our third and final topic. Number three, review. Our last criteria, we will be talking about the piece of gear itself, how it fits into my workflow, why it was chosen for that task, and why I think it works better than other similar items. Now that we have all that generalized information in place, let's get to the real reason you're here, the gear. The first piece of gear I'm going to talk about today is the camera I use for MLS photography. That camera is the Olympus OMD E Mark V-2. I know, ridiculously long name. I wanted to start here because this will probably be the most debated aspect of this video. Some people swear by their full frame cameras. Some people are completely brand loyal to the top three big dogs in the industry. Here's looking at you, Sony, Canon, and Nikon. And still, others will prefer their DSLRs to the mirrorless. No matter what way you look at it, everyone will have their personal preferences and bias for what camera they use. There's a few things I absolutely love about this camera and a few things that drive me absolutely bananas. So let's go ahead and get into a few of those, starting with the pros. Here's the camera right here. Boom, I have my lens attached. We'll go over the lens in just a little bit. All right. When using the right lenses, this camera is sealed from dust and light and rain. This is my number one feature of this camera that I absolutely love. If I'm doing exterior images or just carrying gear in and out of the house and it's raining, I have no worries about it getting wet. I don't need to cover it, buy it some sort of secondary rain cover specific for that camera, or pull out the big ubiquitous one size fits all any rain cover. I just take it out and use it whenever I need it. No matter the weather situation, just make sure there's no water droplets on the lens and you're good to go. The second reason I love this camera is because of the in-camera HDR feature. Now, I know usually this is some really kitschy stuff, but honestly, I use it every single day. Compared to the single raw exterior image, there's much more dynamic range. Keep in mind, I only use this for exterior images because I use the flash technique for interior images, and when doing a flambient or hand-blended HDR, it can come out a little too saturated and processed looking whenever you use the in-camera HDR for those individual frames. But for exteriors in particular, this works really, really well, and I really can't recommend it more. Now, let's go into the camera and talk about the criteria that I mentioned in the beginning. The very first criteria we are going to be talking about is the usability of this camera. This is why I use it. This is a 5 out of 5 for me. It's very user friendly. It almost always works. I've had very few issues with it. I'll talk about the few little issues I have had with it a little later. But its usability is top notch. Another thing I really like about it is this little flip out screen. So it's really useful for taking the camera and putting it into corners, but still being able to see down into the screen from where you're standing. I know a lot of the Sony lines just have the pop up in the back, and that is not as useful as this, in my opinion. Now, on to the next factor. Number two, which is price, and another reason why I chose this wonderful camera is because it is cheap, especially compared to most other cameras in its price range. I believe I bought this when it first came out, and that was 4 years ago now, and it was cheap new, but now you can probably pick up one of these for $1,000, maybe even less. Honestly, a used one for maybe $800. I don't know. Maybe I'll look up one and throw it up right over here. But back to the price, like this is very entry level price and it's worth its penny. Trust me. Now, I guess I should have rearranged those criteria a little bit because I've kind of talked about this one throughout the video while talking about this camera. This camera is a beast. I absolutely loved it. Loved it. I love it. I talked about the HDR features for exterior, that it's very, very useful. The dynamic range goes up a whole lot more for some reason. I don't understand, but it does work wonders. For interiors, it works great. It's dust sealed. Now, it does have a few cons, and I'll talk about those. Number one, even though I mentioned it as a pro earlier, this flip out screen right here. Let me see if I can get up nice and close for you right there. Look at that guy right there. Well, if I turn it around, let's see if I can see it. Right. Boom. There is this little tiny set screw, right? And I use this camera all the time, all day long, 4 houses a day. This screen gets opened and closed so many times. As you can see, it doesn't even set right anymore because it's been opened and closed so many times. I got to kind of pry it up a little bit. But I'll tell you, this little screw right over here that I just mentioned, I have to tighten it up all the time. This is my biggest con with this entire camera, is Olympus's customer service aspect for this one tiny thing. So many times I have lost one screw from here and they refuse to just send you one screw. That's impossible for them. It's outside of their customer service aspect. You must send in the entire camera for repairs. And if you're missing both of those screws, let someone save you, please, because you will definitely have to send it in for repairs. The 2 screws that I have holding mine in are aftermarket screws from other products that just happen to fit in there because I refuse to send it off to Olympus another time. I have sent this thing off 3 times since I've owned it in 5 years just because of that one aspect. I have never had any other problems with it. It's never messed up. It's never frozen on me during a shoot. It's never just lagged out and died for some reason. It has never ever in 5 years given me a single problem. But the one reason I cannot recommend you buy this camera is simply Olympus's customer support on the fact of a screw. They refuse. No screws allowed. They must handle all screwing operations when it comes to this camera. You are not allowed to fiddle with anything. So, that being said, if you own this camera, if you plan on buying this camera, just simply bring a really tiny eyeglass screwdriver around with you so you can tighten up that screw every once in a while, because eventually it will fall out and it will be the bane of your existence trying to find it. If anyone knows what size screw this is or where I could buy them in bulk on Amazon or something like that, like 50, 100 of them, please post that link down below. I would love that information. All right, now let's talk about the lens. The lens is on here. It's a beast. It's my absolute favorite lens. It's probably my favorite lens that I own, period. I use it so much. It is my go-to lens for everything. It is the Olympus Zuko. I don't really know how to pronounce it. I apologize for that, but it is the Olympus Zuko 7 to 14 millimeter 2.8. This is a workhorse. It works for me all day long as a photographic lens, and it seconds as a video lens. It doesn't have any stops in the focus, so it works great for focus pulling. It's a really great video lens. It's sharp as I don't know what. It's a 2.8, so I can still shoot like a 3.2 or a 4 while doing video, and it is tack sharp. Another thing that's really cool about using it for video is the fact that since this is a micro four thirds, the focus ratio is off a little bit from a full frame camera. At least this is what I've noticed over time. I don't know the exact specs on it or anything, but either way, I digress. What I've noticed is with the micro four thirds camera, your focus actually goes farther. So in any other industry, that would probably be a bad thing. Like if I was doing portrait photography, I wouldn't want something that has a longer focus pull because I'm trying to get that shallow depth of field. But in real estate photography in particular, we're not looking for that shallow depth of field. So what we're really looking for is to show as much as physically possible. Now, this is where the micro four thirds, in my opinion, really excels, because both in photography and in video, it pulls more in focus than a traditional full frame DSLR at the exact same f-stop. Like I said before, some people think it's a bad thing. I actually think for our industry, it's a very good thing. So for me, it's a positive in the micro four thirds vision. Now, let's talk about usability. As I mentioned before, I use this lens every single day. It's beautiful, it's reliable, nonstop, it's multifaceted. It's not a prime lens, but it's as sharp as one. So I can set it up in the corner of a doorway and I can bump it out to 7 to 8 mil, take a shot there, and then bump it into about 10 to 12 mil and cut off those corner walls. Give my agents 2 shots, but I'm in the exact same location. So they feel like they're getting more, but really, I'm not really taking that much more time on site. I'm just giving them 2 options from the same frame. It works very nicely, and as I mentioned before, my agents seem to like it because some agents prefer the shots that are super wide open and that show every wall, and some agents prefer a narrowed in, more architectural style shot that doesn't show the exterior walls. Now, you could either learn all of your agent's preferences, or you can just take both of those shots on site, deliver them both, and let the agent decide afterward. I edit all my own pictures, so there's no post-processing fee. I'm not sending them out to anyone, so there's no extra expense there. It's just a little extra time, and realistically, since it's just a zoom in and out, I am not really taking any more time because it doesn't take me any more time on site, and then editing, I'm just copying over the settings from the image before. So it's the exact same thing. Now, let's go on to my next piece of gear in the camera bag. Godox 8200. This thing is beat up. Look at this. If you can see right here, it's missing part of the battery from being dropped. Usually I have actually a rubber band around it to secure it, to keep it nice and tight so it doesn't fluctuate from the battery turning on and off. But for this video, I decided to go ahead and take that off. You can see it's been dropped so many times. This other secure facet has popped out. I actually, during one of the drops, burnt out the top head. I don't think you can buy the square top head secondary. This is actually the secondary light head. It's round instead of square, even though it does seem to give me a little bit more flare than the original traditional square head did. I do seem to like it more. Its spread is a lot better in the room, and its power is unmatched. This is the most powerful thing I bring with me on my flash photography gigs. This is the Godox 8200. I use a mix match of Godox and Flashpoint gear. I don't know if anyone else does that. They all work together, so that's why I do it personally. I personally am switching to Flashpoint, and that's just because I have heard that the customer service and repairability is much better for Flashpoint. I've been told that getting Godox repaired is very difficult, to say the least. I've never personally had to repair any of them, so I don't know. This is just what I've heard from third-party sources, but I've been told Flashpoint is much easier to deal with. Plus, I really like Adorama. I buy a lot of stuff from there. I trade a lot of my gear there. They seem to be really helpful. Ever since COVID started, they have been super helpful in my ability to switch out all of my old photo gear sitting on my racks, taking up room, and allow me to transition more into video, which has really helped me in my business because it's allowed me to offer more to my agents, and they seem to love that. Now, back to this gear. This is actually a secondary piece, the little pistol grip. It is much smaller than this. I find the pistol grip very useful for, you can see, it's even like, it's burnt in how long it's been there. It's very, very useful for when you're on a shoot, so you can extend it out further than you need to. I've seen some pistol grips that actually extend out so you can put it out further, but what I've come to notice over time is that if your camera is here and you're flashing back this way, if you put it out too far, it's going to start causing lens flare in your interior images from your wide open lens. So you still have to be kind of tight. So I personally don't feel the need to have the extended reach one. Maybe you do. Maybe there's certain situations where it really works out. But for me, it never really has. So just this stationary pistol grip works perfect. Now, if you notice, I face mine differently than everyone else. You would think a pistol grip would face this way so you can wrap your hand around it, but I face it this way because when I'm shooting into a room, it's facing back towards me. So this is the way my hand naturally hits it. So I put it on there backwards. Just a little tip for you. But either way, 8200, this is crucial. Usability, 5 out of 5. I use it every single day, every single shoot. This is my main flash unit. I carry 5 strobes randomly. I carry about 5 strobes on me every single day, but this is the work hog. This one is in every single shot because it's just so much brighter. I don't have to use it at full power. It's always just right there. I have a little slot that I've made on my tripod for it, so it sits right there. It's very useful, very easy to use, and very, very, very worth the money it costs. This price is definitely the most expensive flash I carry with me now, and it's only about $200, $250. I'll put a link up right over here so you can check it out. But either way, most expensive flash I carry with me. Price, definitely well worth it because I use it so often. There used to be scenarios where I would have to hold multiple speed lights in my hand at a time just so I can try and get the shot. Like, I'd be out there like this. Oh, it's too dark. I need 2. Give me 1 more. 3. I'll hold 3 speed lights. But with the power of this guy, I never need that. I just need the 1. I use other speed lights for accent lighting around the place, but I never need more power in my main light than just this one, unless I am in a giant room. Lastly, we'll talk about the review. How does it stack up to other gear in its price point? Realistically, there aren't really other pieces of gear in its price point. There's the Flashpoint equivalent of it, the Evolve 200 or something like that. I don't remember exactly because I don't have it. It will probably be the next one that I buy because, as I said, I'm switching over to the Flashpoint gear. But for now, broken battery, but for now, I just use the Godox one because it's what I have. I know there are also a couple old school power packs that kind of go on the side that have the cable that come up with the flash head up here. I don't know much about those price points, but I remember last time I looked at it, it was more expensive than this. The batteries for it are about $79, $80, something like that. So you can have multiple batteries, even though, as I mentioned before, I will shoot 5 houses in one day, and this battery doesn't even make it down to halfway. It lasts every single day, all day long. Its battery power is great. That's one thing I would never ever complain about it. My only actual complaint about it is that I know it may sound dumb, but I really wish it had this mounting hole that I have knocked out. I wish it was on both sides. So it had one over here. So you had the ability to mount it whichever way is most comfortable for when you're walking around. Some people are lefties, some people are righties, and that matters to gearheads. But that's really just something that they can improve in the future. As of complaints, I don't really have any. Like, it works great. That's why I bought it. It's a 5 out of 5. I already mentioned that, right? 5 out of 5? All right, next piece of gear. Receiver. This is my Godox receiver. It's nothing fancy. As a matter of fact, it's the absolute cheapest one, I'm pretty sure. It came with my very first speed light from Godox that I ever bought. I want to upgrade to the Pro version because it's nice and slanty and you can adjust everything very easily on fly, but this works. And I am prone to believe that I don't need to spend money on new gear if I don't need to. That may be different than a lot of other channels are going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you to use what's available to you until you have to buy something new. Now, I've had this guy for, once again, probably 5 years since I got the Olympus, and it's worked perfectly. Never had an issue with it, never needed to change. I have that Pro sitting in my Amazon cart right now, just in case one day this one does break, but until that happens, I'm just going to keep rocking and rolling with this one because it's reliable. Once again, I'll go over its usability is 5 out of 5. Obviously, I use it every single day and it doesn't have any issues. It has a lot of pros about it. It does have one con, but the main pro that it has, it also has an extra hot shoe. Now, why will that be useful? Well, that is useful because sometimes, I never have this issue with my 8200, which is why I love it so much, but sometimes with a traditional speed light, when you're really close to these sensors, it won't go off. So sometimes you're going to have to hold this really far away from one another and stretch out into the room in order for them to both go off at the same time. That is the only real negative I have with this thing, other than the fact that it doesn't have the slanty screen like the Pro one, so you can read it easier and change everything much easier. But like I said, that's a secondary focus. I don't necessarily need it yet, so I haven't splurged to get it. Price, it is the cheapest one and it works great, so I have no problem on the price. Very worth the price. Now the review itself, I've already talked about a few of these. I love the extra hot shoe because, as I just mentioned, it allows you to stick this guy right on here so you don't have that really close connection issue. Or if you're having an issue with your levels, you can put a bubble level on top of here. I mean, there's 100 reasons why having an extra hot shoe is a good thing and not a bad thing. So review, very usable. I love this product. I use it all the time. I would love to try out the X Pro, I believe it's called, but until then, the X1 works just fine. It's cheap, it's reliable, and it fits in my budget, and it fits smaller in my camera case. Next product. Speedlight number 1. This is the Godox TT600. This is pretty much the staple in our industry for a speedlight. Everyone is switching to the Godox or Flashpoint equivalent. There is a Flashpoint equivalent to this. I do not have it. Now, I'll tell you the one difference between everyone else and me is that everyone else carries these because they're very, very powerful. Now, what I carry mainly is something else. I actually carry the Flashpoint Zoom 2. It's much smaller. Look how much smaller it is, which means it's much lighter, which is a great thing. Trust me, weight matters when you're carrying these things all day long, and the size difference. Now, let's talk about this thing. It's very, very powerful. It's very, very useful, and it can survive a drop. It's cheap. It's like, well, let's start off with my criteria point just like before. Criteria 1, usability. It is very usable. It's easy. It's high-speed sync if you need it. I rarely need that in the real estate world, but if you need it, it's there. It's very durable. So, like I said, I've probably dropped this thing 50 times. Like, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure. Look at that. Battery panel just comes right off. And it still works, no problem. This thing, it's a workhorse. In 5 years, I have broken a few of these, but that's reasonable. 5 houses a day, 5 days a week. That's a lot of houses. I take these things, I put them up on door jambs, I put them on top of fridges, I put them next to counters, I hang them off of chairs. I literally put them anywhere they'll fit. I'll take them and I'll lean them up on top of a mirror or a picture frame and set them up against the wall like this. So they fall all the time. Very durable. Usability, 5 for sure. Actually, I'll give it 4 because it's heavy. This thing weighs almost as much as the 200. Let me grab this again. This is the 200. Look, so realistically speaking, it's not that much smaller than it. It's about the same size. It's the same width. So you could just carry a bunch of these, but this thing has one useful function that this does not. Number 1, it has a hot shoe mount. This has no way to hook it up to a hot shoe of any sort, so there's a million reasons why you would want them. I don't need to go over all that now. But secondly, as you notice, the top of these guys flex, which is really, really useful because you can set them on something flat and angle the light wherever you want it. It also built into it, well, my other part broke off. It has that traditional white flag that comes out, and it has the extra diffuser. I use this in certain situations, but very rarely. The white flag I used to use a lot because it actually helps on colored walls. It does reflect back a little more white than whatever the color is everywhere. So it's also useful for blocking off the lens flare that pops off when you're hiding it in other places. But I have lost that one because this one is very old. Let's talk about price. This is actually much cheaper than the last speedlights I used to use. I used to use the Nikon brand, the SB80s or 800s, or I don't know, that was a long time ago. Those were $300 a pop. This thing is $80 a pop. Way cheaper, way better. Price point gets a huge thumbs up. It's definitely worth it. Last criteria is review. As I mentioned before, I think this thing overall gets like a 4. It's very user friendly. It runs off of AA batteries that are very easily rechargeable. It's dummy proof because I'm a dummy and I haven't destroyed it yet, and I can still operate it. So anyone can figure out how to use them. I highly recommend this product right here. All right, here it is, the Zoom 2. This is going from Godox to Flashpoint. Flashpoint is Adorama's little brother, big brother, twin to Godox. I don't know what you'd call it. It's Adorama's version of Godox. And like I said, I just like to support Adorama, and I know they have a really great kind of user customer service base. So far, this thing has been awesome. I've dropped it a bunch of times, and I still haven't broken it. And what's nice about it is it's way lighter than the bigger ones. It's not quite as powerful, but we don't really need a lot of power in what we're doing, believe it or not. You only need a little bit of power, especially for these little guys, because all I'm using them for are secondary light sources or to light extra hallways, bedrooms, stuff like that. So you only need a little bit of light. So why carry 3 of these that weigh twice as much as these? Like, I'm cutting my weight in half. And at the very end of this video, I'll go into what's really important about the weight that you carry. Now, let's go into usability of this thing. I will tell you one thing. This thing did take me a little longer to set up than my Godox. The Godox straight out the bag, super user friendly, super easy to set up. I literally just hooked it onto my stuff and took a picture and it worked. This, I had a little bit of frustration getting it to work. And I don't know if that's just because I'm using the Godox trigger, so there was a little bit more to go around. I don't have the Flashpoint trigger, but I did finally get it to work, and now I don't have any issues. The issue I had with it was some stupid setting on here that I had to figure out. I just Googled it and figured it out. So if you're having that problem, just Google it, and it'll probably be the first answer that pops up. Next, price. Here's kind of the 4 about this one. This one's a little bit more powerful, and they both cost the same amount. I guess it's the same amount of technology in a smaller package. That's what I'm going for. It's not really a negative for me. They're like 75, 80 bucks and well worth its price in gold. I would pick this over this any day because I can carry 2 of these in the same amount of space and the same weight as one of these. And 2 of something will always be more useful than 1. That's why I carry a multitude of lights to begin with, is because having them all is very nice to switch back and forth between. Lastly, we'll go on to the review itself of this Flashpoint light. I believe it is excellent. As I just mentioned, I would buy it over the Godox one. I would buy it over the bigger one. Would I buy it over the AD200? Only if I already owned an AD200. If I didn't have an AD200, I would buy that first and then this. But if I've already owned one of those, then there's no reason to own multiple ones when I can have a bunch of these. As I mentioned before, it weighs almost nothing, which is super crucial. The gear bag. This is it. This is what I carry. I used to carry a messenger bag, as almost everyone in our industry does, and I didn't care about weight. I used to carry the AD200, my camera, and I would carry 5 of these big bad boys in a messenger bag. My bag weighed approximately 32 pounds, including all of the extra little things I carry that I'll get into in just a moment. But over time, after about 10 years, I started noticing issues with my lower back. Come to find out, it was my sciatic nerve from carrying so much weight on this one shoulder for so long. It was giving me issues on the back. So I was recommended to switch where I carry my weight, which is where this bag comes in handy. I don't know the name brand. It literally cost me $12, I think, on Amazon. This is a waist bag. This is the belt. This thing goes onto the side. All of my flashes fit in here. Let me grab them all. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, and the big boy. Cram it in there. Look at that. Everything fits in there nice and securely. Totally loaded up. It weighs 11 pounds. 11 pounds compared to 32 pounds. That's just in the gear alone. All of my side pieces, I actually carry more things on the side and in this bag than I used to in my messenger bag. The best part is that it's really helped my sciatic nerve. Like, I have lost a lot of that back pain, and it's just from doing as simple as stopping the messenger bag carry and going to the belt carry. This thing kind of hangs off of my shoulder or off of my belt a little bit. I'm sure I might look a little goofy to some people, but I absolutely love it. It's more user-friendly than my messenger bag because I never have to move it around. I used to have to toss the messenger bag back and forth a whole bunch during a shoot. This is always just on my hip right there, easy to access, go inside. I can't recommend it enough. It has a bunch of little cool pockets to hide all of my stuff in. All of my flashes fit in here great, as I mentioned before, and all of these little ones even fit in the little tiny pockets over here. They fit everywhere because they're so tiny. They're pretty easy to stick anywhere. The bag is a very crucial part of what's in my bag. So, I don't know the name of the brand. Here's the brand right there. I got it off of Amazon. I'll try and put a link down at the bottom of the video if you're interested. But this bag, this one bag, really did start to save my back because I no longer have that messenger bag carry. So I no longer have that issue over my sciatic nerve. Now, close this guy up for a second. And that's it. My old beat up card carry. That's it. Look at that. Here's the top one. I always keep one on the top that's really messed up, as you can tell. So that way all the rest of them underneath stay nice and clean. I also carry business cards for the main other companies I work with that do services that I do not do. So I keep my own personal business cards and cards of my references right here with me in my bag at all times. Next. Now, this thing may seem silly, but this is just extra cards. It holds, look, I even have a 16 gig in there. How weak and useless is that? But it just holds old cards and extra cards. So if you're like me and you do a lot of real estate, that means there's a lot of shuffling SD cards in and out of your computer at home, which means that every once in a while, you're going to forget one of those SD cards at home. And you're going to be on site and you're going to be like, well, now what do I do? Well, I never have that problem again because I always have extra SD cards on me in my camera bag. Few extra SD cards, few micro SDs for the drone just in case, or any other random equipment. Like I said, it doesn't have to be anything big, doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to go buy new cards for it. Put all of your old cards that you no longer use in it. This thing, once again, was on Amazon. I believe it was $9. And it's great. Look, it tells you it holds 4 micros and 2 big SDs. What more do you need for an emergency backup? Next. Puffer. This thing is super useful. It's made by VSGO. I believe it costs around $12 once again, an Amazon buy. Let's see if I can bring it up nice and close to the camera for you. This is it right here. Boom. What I really love about this thing is how tiny it is. Look, it's smaller than my hand. It fits in my palm. And this is totally flexible and bendable. It will never scratch the front of your lens. It will never mess up your camera. This thing is nice. I love it. I actually keep an extra one in my car just in case I ever lose this one because I have lost them before. I used to buy the rocket fish, I believe they were called, like most people in the industry, but I've just found that this one works better. It has a nice jet stream. Everything on it is soft. It fits anywhere. I can literally keep it in my bag squished up like this tight if I need to, and just whenever I want, it just pops back up. I never have any problems with it. Great, great, great buy and useful for me because I blow off my lens every time I take my lens cap off. Wouldn't recommend it more. All right, that one was kind of weak, right? Just something simple, something easy. This is one of those metal rubber-coated twist ties. This one is, once again, as you can tell by looking at it, it's old, it's beat up, it's definitely had its fair share of use, but I use it a lot. Once again, I will use it to take a strobe. So let me find one of my strobes. I put them all in the bag so they're all put away, but I use it a lot to put a strobe on a banister. So I wrap this around like a handrail, put the strobe on top, twist it down nice and tight so that way I don't have to worry about the strobe falling off the rail and down 2 floors, which I've definitely had happen before. This thing has saved my strobe multiple times, and if I would have had this earlier, I would not have had this. This is direct cause of not using this. I recommend buying one. Next product. Now, this is more than one product, I know. These are 2 cards that I carry with me at all time in my bag. Number 1 is my own personal media card. It has my name, my picture, a QR code that links back to my website that is direct information about me personally. All of my employees have one and they all link back. It's just a form of like, hey, we are professionals here. Here's an ID if you want to see further validation of my credentials. Now, this thing is also very useful because most airlines will give you a discount on baggage of some sort if you have a media ID, because traditionally people traveling with media gear have overages in weight, and a lot of companies will waive that overages in weight. I believe Delta and American Airlines both do it. Don't quote me on that. Things may have changed since the Cove, but either way, media ID. I carry one of these with me. The next thing I carry with me is a music card. Do you see this? Audio selection. I do things a little bit differently than a lot of videographers and cinematographers in our industry. I actually let agents choose their song if they want. I have about 12 songs that I constantly license from my licensing site. I use Envato personally for the majority of my stuff because it's awesome. There's this one creator in particular that I really love their stuff, but all of them have a little bit of a different feel. There's a QR code that will link them directly to a website with those 12 options that will allow them to choose a song. Now, a lot of people will ask, why do I do this? This seems like a pain in the butt. It's not really a pain in the butt. Agents love it. They feel like they're part of the creation process where they weren't before. It really gives them an input and makes them feel a part of the process. So they feel more connected to your experience of creating their content, which makes them more excited for buying your content next time and hiring you as their photographer or videographer time and time again. Like I said, I have 12 choices. They're all on my website. I let them choose one. They don't have to choose one. If they don't want to choose one, I will pick one. If they have a go-to, they're like, oh, always use this one, then that's what I do. But either way, this little card right here gives them the option to do that themselves. That's what I think is really unique. And these are 2 other things that I always carry with me. This, I'm sure everyone's seen it before. It is the lens pin, Band Dust. Look, it's old. I've had it forever. It works really, really well. It has the cool little cleaning pad on one side that's always secured and tucked away. It has the nice little brushy part for this side. I do use it a lot, especially this side. I find I use this side a lot, especially when I'm waiting for clients at the front door and it want to look like I'm doing something other than just standing there looking irritated. So I just wipe off my lens a little more than necessary. But I use this a lot, and obviously the other side is very, very useful for smudges and prints and stuff like that that make it on the lens. I keep this as a secondary because you can always use extra things to clean things. That one spins pretty good too. The extra charged battery. Don't leave home without it, because the minute you do, you're going to need it. For some reason, strobe and speed light batteries, I never have a problem with. They're just AA's. They usually last a long time. I have more AA's laying around, but I am personally notorious for forgetting about batteries and recharging them for my camera. I have 4 extra batteries for my camera. One stays in my bag with me at all time, and I make sure it's charged. I pull it out once a week and charge it. Every weekend, I kind of have this ritual of charging that battery, and I keep an extra one in the truck and an extra one at my house just in case I lose all the other ones. The truck one, I try and pull out and charge once every 2 weeks or so, but that's no guarantee. I do try though, but please have an extra battery for your main camera source, because worst comes to worst, on the job site, you can at least get something with just a camera. But if you can't turn on your camera, you are going to look like the least professional person possible. You will look more professional if you drop your camera and smash it than you will if you get there and say, Ah, my battery's not charged. I completely forgot about it. We're going to have to do this another time. So buy yourself another battery and save yourself that client and your respect in the industry. No, just kidding. But seriously, keep another battery. Well, that's it. That's everything in my camera bag that I carry on a daily basis for photography. This probably ended up being a whole lot longer than I wanted it to be or than I set out to be, but I hate to just rush through things and not tell you why I have all of this stuff. I put a lot of thought into my gear. I've changed it around over time, and I've built it very specifically for crafting quality flash imagery quickly on site, and the image has to be to a certain standpoint that it's easy to edit when I get back home, which keeps my time down, which allows me to keep my costs down, which keeps me in work, my employees paid, and my agents and brokers happy because they have a quality product at a reasonable price. Well, that's all I got for you once again, other than brand new swag. Sorry, I'm really excited about this new shirt if you can't tell. I've talked about it a couple times. Either way, come check us out next time. Thanks for watching.